Welcome. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the Conscious Matters channel on the BVTV network. I learned from my very first managerial job, which was in the world of entertainment, that my job was to make timely decisions. Dithering decision making meant angry customers and confused staff. But for many, decision making doesn't come easy, and indecisiveness becomes the norm, as witnessed by the action of many of our politicians. Decision delay is, I believe, a growing failing within business. Worried about stress, worried about risk, worried about legislation. Let's find a way to delay decisions seems too often the thinking. But for decisive companies with decisive leaders who are agile and adaptable, success follows. I want you to know more about how leaders can make better decisions in these challenging times. So who better to ask than the person who wrote the acclaimed book? Better decisions, better thinking, better outcomes. How to shift from mindful to mindful leadership. Let's meet Stephen Howard. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Malcolm. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, well, you're going to be bragging about that you're in sunny Palm Springs in California, and you know it's snowing here in the northeast of England. But anyways, we're socially distanced, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah. Stephen, what's your brief thoughts on the state of decision-making within businesses as we kick off 2021? Indecision, decisiveness, too reactive? What's your thoughts? And how is stress impacting the decisions people are making?
Well, I love the phrase you use in the opening there of decision delay. I think it's a great phrase. Yeah, too many people are afraid to make decisions. They're hesitant to make decisions. And we really have a dichotomy, Malcolm. Too many, particularly business leaders, not so much the political leaders, but business leaders are making snap decisions, quick decisions, particularly lower level, mid-level leaders, first line supervisors, because they're under so much pressure. But as the book explains, and hopefully we'll get into discussing this, stress impacts our brain, which impacts our ability to make good decisions and proper decisions.
Hey, by the way, just before we move on to the questions, what prompted you to write the book?
Well, I was living in Australia. I moved back to the United States to look after my father. He had some early Alzheimer's, and then before he passed, I was his primary caregiver. I was researching it, trying to figure out what I should be doing and what mistakes I was making looking after him. And then I live alone, and so I started getting concerned about, well, what about me? Is this genetic? Am I going to have the same issues as I age? Who's going to look after me? How do I look after my brain? And I started talking to leaders, business leaders about this subject. And they all said, I'll worry about that when I retire. Alzheimer's is old timers disease, as people call it. I'm not going to worry about it now. And then I started looking at it, how it impacts decision making. And when I started talking to business leaders that how this impacts your bottom line, suddenly I had their attention. And so that's why I wrote the book, and that's why the title of the book, if I can explain that for your viewers here, is
we'll talk about that in a follow-up question. Okay. But I just wanted to get that initial grasp there, because in my mind, indecisiveness is costly, but on the other hand, fast, rash decision making can also be costly.
Absolutely.
How should business leaders go about finding that sweet spot, which may be in the middle?
The thing I'm teaching and coaching leaders on today is learn to become what I call a first responder. Now, when I lived in Singapore, I got trained as a scuba diver, and I got trained up to rescue diver. And when you're trained as a rescue diver, the first thing they tell you is don't just jump in the water. Stop. If somebody's in the water, help, help, help. If you jump in the water, there could be jellyfish, there could obviously be sharks, there could be fishing nets, there could be things that would put you in danger. Also, if you just jump in, you tend to forget one of your fins or something else. So you stop, you assess the situation. That's what our EMTs do, and that's why they're called first responders. A fire truck that shows up in a car crash, they don't just jump out and rush to the car. They look, is there smoke? Is there a gasoline? Is there a spark? Is the thing going to blow up? And then they respond rather than react. And that's what the sweet spot is, learning to respond, not react to people, don't react to situations, and don't react to events.
That's really sensible thinking. It's a little bit like we're saying to people, don't, take time to think. Just don't react too quickly. Your book as we just discussed before, the title to me is intriguing, as it seems out of order to me. Most people would think that better thinking leads to better decisions and then to better outcomes. But you focus on the approach of better decisions lead to better thinking and then better outcomes. What's behind your thinking there?
Following on that story, the first decision we need to make is don't get hijacked. Understand that our brain is getting emotionally hijacked if we're stressed, if we're upset, and we're not making good decisions. So we have to make that very first decision, make the better decision. Pause, ask good questions. Don't respond. Don't react. Ask some good questions, get some clarity, and then boom, now you can you can think better because you now have your brain in control. And then you can have better outcomes.
That's very, very sensible thinking, Stephen. And I'm going to ask people to make certain that they rewatch that part again, because really there's a huge value in doing that. Now, just before we move on, by the way, I just want to remind people of your URL website and Caliente Leadership. Caliente is a Spanish word for hot, is it?
It is indeed, but it also, the second definition of caliente is passionate. Conversation caliente is a passionate conversation. And if you have any experience in Latin America, you have lots of passionate conversations in Latin America.
And hot and passionate as well.
Hot and passionate as well. We won't go down that road today, hopefully. So I'm very passionate about leadership. I'm very passionate about leadership development. And I try to bring passion in everything I do. So the second part of this, kind of interesting, is where I live in Palm Springs. The land is owned by the Agua Caliente, hot water, Agua Caliente Band of Indians. So it's also my tribute to our Native American landowners.
Yeah. Okay. So viewers can see it on the screen behind me, but for listeners, let me just spell that out to you. Caliente, which is Caliente, Caliente leadership, calienteleadership.com. Okay. Do you think that in this fast-paced, ever-changing world, enough businesses pay enough attention to ensuring that decision makers have the right decision-making ability? And if not, where do you think they're lacking?
I can tell you why it's lacking, because we're not taught how to make decisions. There are some programs that talk about how to make strategic decisions or complex decisions, some processes for that. But it's like we go through school and everyone assumes that we know how to make decisions and how to make good decisions, and we don't. And going back to kind of what you alluded to earlier, we've all said in our lives, I was so angry I couldn't think straight. Every one of us has said that, and that happens to everybody. And yet we still make decisions when we're so angry, or as you alluded to earlier, we postpone decisions. So we're not taught how to make good decisions. And so that's another reason I wrote the book, is to tell people, look, slow down, ask the right questions, get yourself in control. And then, in the book, we talk about some of the fears that people have about decision making, some processes about decision making for both professional and your personal life.
By the way, those fears that they got, are some of those fears to do with the fact of I'll make the wrong decision, so therefore I may get sacked?
That is, and there's that. You made a wrong decision in the past, so you lose confidence in yourself, and so you postpone it. In the business world, we often talk about paralysis by analysis, always wanting more information, the latest information, which is not always necessary. And that's why people don't make decisions, and they're also afraid of others. Not just sacked, but just being judged, but also being judged by ourselves. We are our biggest critics. And so people often, prefer not to make a decision, or hopefully if I don't make it, somebody else will make it. Or if I don't make a decision now, this too will pass. And it doesn't pass. So that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Look, as I've grown older, I've tried to look younger, but never mind. I'll start putting that aside. As I've grown older, I've purposefully challenged my brain, not just with gaining knowledge, but also in putting myself into out of comfort situations, trying to think locally about technical issues and so on. I think that's good for the health of my brain. Am I right? And if so, what else should I do? What else should I be doing to have a healthy mind and brain?
Malcolm, you're absolutely correct. The brain likes new things. And, people say, well, I'll learn to play Sudoku. Well, if you play Sudoku for 3 months, all it is, you get better at Sudoku, which is good, but then it doesn't continue. Here's a simple tip. Here's a tip everyone could do, because we're all creatures of habit. When we get out of lockdowns and we start driving to work or driving to the grocery store, occasionally take a different route. Because when you get in your car and you drive to your office, or you drive to the school for your kids, or wherever you're going to on a regular basis, you take the same route and your brain is not focusing on it. You're kind of looking at the cars and everything, but your brain's thinking of other stuff. Take a different route every now and then. And then you'll say, oh, wow, there's a building going up. Oh, I didn't know that store had opened. Oh, I didn't know that store had closed. Oh, look at the trees. Look at the flowers. Same thing if you walk a different. I know you're not going to walk today in the snow, but when you do get back to walking in the springtime, do different walks. The brain likes new information. Or, as you said, learn a new hobby, challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone. And even as an adult, learn a new language, play an instrument, just keep learning. One of my favorite phrases is always keep learning, because life never stops teaching. And so that's what you can be doing. That's what you can be doing.
That's a cracker, isn't it? I love, say that one again.
Always be learning, because life never stops teaching.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Let's now talk about Stephen Howard. Have you ever been yourself indecisive and wished you'd made a better decision faster? What inspires you about decision making? On the other question, what inspires Stephen Howard to jump out of bed in the morning, eager to make a decision? And it is a bit early there for where I'm talking to you, isn't it?
I jumped out of bed at 4:30 to talk to you this morning, Malcolm.
Oh, wow.
So you were my inspiration today. But on the other days of the week, what inspires me is helping other people. I've got fortunately a very rich life. I lived in Asia for 21 years. I lived in Australia for 12 years. I'm now back in the United States. I've traveled the world. I've been working for multinational companies. I've been coaching people. I've coached and trained over 10,000 people. So I have a lot of experience, and I like to think of myself as a funnel and take that funnel of knowledge and experience and help people grow, particularly younger leaders, help the next generation of leaders. That's what inspires me. Have I ever been indecisive? Oh, absolutely. I'm a human being. I mean, even today, I can be indecisive. But the thing is, now that I've learned about this, I catch myself quicker, and then I can kind of have that self-talk and say, wait a second, Stephen, this should not be that hard of a decision. Stop. What's causing you? What are you worried about? Put your worry factors down on a piece of paper and then make a decision. So yeah, I mean, we all will do that. None of us are ever perfect, but this is what I learned about being indecisive and the impact of being indecisive.
Well, you're helping me dramatically here, by the way, because it is Friday over here and it's nearly Friday evening. Thank goodness it's Friday. And I have to make the decision about a glass of white wine or a glass of red wine. Ooh, Stephen.
Well, it doesn't have to be an either or. My Friday tonight will be a white wine to start and a red wine later.
I'll just go straight to the rosé. Look, let's get back to stress and overload. It's not going to go away as businesses increasingly see the value to them of remote working, which in itself can cause loneliness and cumulative stress. Do you think businesses need a new, let me call it, a conscious code of conduct to handle this new phenomenon if they want to grow successful and engage teams?
Absolutely. I would argue that organizations today have a duty of care in that area. Just because the employee is working from home, I mean, subsequent to the book we're talking about, I came out with a book in the middle of 2020 called How Stress and Anxiety Impacts Your Decision Making. And that's for everybody. That's not for leaders. And that I purposely wrote that book because of the pandemic. The prolonged stress that we're going under impacts our brain. Prolonged stress, what it does is it actually degenerates the part of our brain that controls our cognitive functions and our rational thinking. So, and we've all gone through prolonged stress for the last 10 or 12 months. And this is why during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, we've seen increased alcohol abuse, increased eating abuse, and unfortunately increase can't can't control ourselves. We're physically losing that part of our brain that controls our actions like that. And again, we have to we can get it back, but we have to be very conscious of it. When we get angry, we need to take steps to say, stop, slow down. Don't let the anger, don't let me react to the anger. Don't let me react to the person who's upsetting me. Let me respond to it. But organizations, I definitely advocate, have a duty of care to focus on this issue, train people on this issue, educate people on this issue, and help one another.
Brilliant. Yes. Again, just before we move on to the next question, let me remind people of your website URL. It's Caliente, Caliente, Caliente leadership.com. And what will people find at your website, by the way, Stephen?
Well, obviously my products and services are there, but my website is very rich in terms of resources. I like giving back. So every month, for instance, I still read 30 to 40 articles on leadership, and every month I post links to 15 to 20 of those articles. So there's a whole resource section gives you links to articles, gives you links to books on leadership, gives you links to books on brain health and brain power, articles on brain health and brain power, consciousness, mindfulness. And then I've got a blog there as well, host on that website, and I write about this frequently. So that I try and give back a lot of information. There's a lot of rich content on that website.
Okay. And so that's Caliente. Is it Caliente? Go on, pronounce it correctly for me.
Caliente leadership. Yeah. .com. So the kind of the last E is kind of an A. Well, that's my pronunciation, but I'm an American. I don't even speak English very well, according to you guys. So,
and just reminding people, it's for a passionate hot. What's your personal top tips to avoid burnout to yourself in these extraordinary times? Now, mine is extra time and wine with my wife.
Okay. Well, that's good, and and you know yourself. That's very good. I don't have a wife, but I'll take the wine advice from you. Mother Nature is the best doctor in the world. So when you can, if you can't go outside, obviously in your weather today, you're not going to. But even to look at the snow. If you get stressed this afternoon or evening, look at the snow. Look at the beauty of the snow, the peacefulness, the calmness when it's snowing. When you're in good weather, walk outside. 15 minutes of walking outside. When you can, let the sun hit your face, your hands for just 10 minutes or so. Feel the warmth of the sun, feel the breeze of the air. This will automatically calm you down. Walking, exercise is the best thing we can do for our brain health, our long-term brain health particularly. So anything of like that, one thing in the office I teach people, I coach people, as you see here, I've got my cup of coffee here, is just smell it. Just the aroma of it, and take a deep breath.
I'm getting it.
There you go. Well, I have cinnamon in my coffee this morning, so it's quite nice. That's the smell you're getting. And in the book, I think I've got 25 or 30 tips of how, both in work and in your home life, of just how to become more mindful, become more present, and that's the key to it. Mindfulness has nothing to do with yoga. You don't have to become a Buddhist. You don't have to go on a 10-day silent retreat. Just become mindful, become present. As you hear me slowing my voice down, calming myself down. I get excited when talking with you, but calming myself down. Now I'm more mindful. I'm in a position to make better decisions, ask better questions, better reflection, and therefore I'll get better outcomes.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, when, and I emphasize this word when, this coronavirus is truly under control and the world sort of becomes normal again, what do you think the legacy of it will be within businesses and their people in respect of decision making?
That's a brilliant question, Malcolm. I think people are learning that, as you said earlier, if we postpone all decisions, we're going to make not making a decision, by the way, is a decision. So that is a decision. So if you're postponing a decision, that is a decision. I think that we're going to learn to respect each other, to learn to get other people's insights, that we don't, as a leader, we don't have to make all the decisions. We don't have all the knowledge. Sometimes the leader, the best thing we can do is ask the right questions and lead the group to making a decision. But I also think we're going to learn that we're all going to make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes as long as we learn from it. And none of us are perfect. and we're going to make some big mistakes. We're going to make some small mistakes. I'll tell your audience a little story. From the 1960s. The CEO of IBM, Tom Watson, he was in his office, and in came his chief technology officer, and the guy handed him his resignation letter. And Tom Watson says, "What's this all about?" He said, "Well, sir, that program we've been working on, it's not going to work. The computer, we can't get it to work. We've cost the company $1 million. It's my responsibility. I feel I should resign." And now we're talking 1960. $1 million in 1960 was a lot of money, not today's money. And Tom Watson looked at him, and he took the letter and tore it up, and he said, "No, sir, I've just invested $1 million in your education. You're not leaving." So understanding we can make mistakes as long as we learn from them.
Great little story. That's great little story. Now, sadly, in a moment, I've got to be leaving Palm Springs and getting back to cold northeast of England. Yeah, well, it's lovely countryside, mind. But before I go, I like to give all my guests 3 wishes. Your 3 wishes are for what businesses should be doing now to ensure that they'll be making better decisions in 2021 and onwards.
Learn to pause. Learn to, as I said earlier, learn to respond, not react. Don't react to people. Don't react to situations. Don't react to events. Be forgiving. Let your staff make mistakes. They're never going to do it the way you want to do it. As long as it's not ethical, financial, integrity issues, cost the company tens of millions of dollars. It's okay for people to make mistakes. We can recover from mistakes. I'd say that'd be number 1. Number 2, and this is not just trust, I would say this goes across leadership across the world, would be, I think we need leaders that we can trust. We need leaders, whether in business, whether in government, whether in institutions, they need to become more transparent, more open. I mean, if I asked you, which leaders of the world do you trust? Which leaders of the world do you believe in? Most of us can't come up with more than 5 or 6 at a time. And that's sad. Our leaders in business, our leaders in politics have been for so often treating us as adults. We're not competent. We're not understanding that you don't know all the facts. We just take our sound bites and believe us. And I think this is what happened with Corona. How many decisions by political leaders around the world, by medicinal leaders around the world, by pharmaceutical, who do you believe? And there's no trust. So I think leaders, if you're in a leadership position, number 1 thing I would suggest you do is focus on building trust. Be open, be transparent, 2-way communications. And I guess the third one I would say, Malcolm, and I hopefully comes out of this pandemic, and as I've been coaching leaders lately on my one-to-one coaching sessions, I say, when you talk to your remote staff, the first question you should ask them every time, whether you talked to them yesterday or a week ago, how's your family? How's your family coping with the pandemic? Second question is, how are you? How are you coping with the pandemic? And, blah, blah. And now let's talk about business. So empathy and kindness, all of us as leaders, anyone in a leadership position needs to focus on. I think those should be your 2 key words for 2021, empathy and kindness, and how you're going to express those as a leader and how you're going to express those as an organization. Those would be my wishes.
Brilliantly said, Stephen. Now, just before we finish, and remember, we're still live on this, still recording, I need you to make a decision. Will you come back again?
Oh, absolutely, sir. I don't even have to think about that one. It was a lovely conversation. You have a nice conversational style to you, Malcolm, and would love to come back and talk about something else someday.
Yeah, we'll talk about more leadership, Stephen. Thank you very much indeed. Stephen Howard, CalienteLeadership.com. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Malcolm, and enjoy the snow while you have it.